Someone says, I'm a developer with a passion for cars. Where does one get started with ECU, reverse engineering, and tuning? Any good resources or test labs? I mean, this job it's hacking, you know,
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's
and if
it, it was yeah. It is.
reverse
It's like
engineering.
reverse engineering.
So if you specialize in reverse engineering, you could certainly do a lot of good. The software side, the tuning and calibration side is,
Yeah, they're
you know, you could go to school for you know automotive, engine calibration, learn all the theories and stuff. But honestly, if you start tuning standalones and just start doing some reading and you know blow a few motors up, you'll figure out pretty quick what works and what doesn't.
yeah. There's. I mean, it depends on what you're really interested in doing with your setup. If you're looking at it from a reverse engineering side, what really are you trying to do? If you're looking to recalibrate the vehicle for to retune it and get some different performance or different calibrations on it, that's not really as much reverse engineering these days. That's just on the calibration side. Now, if you have an ECU that you can't flash or that no one else can flash, then you're going to be getting into the reverse engineering side, which are two very different disciplines. So
Yeah.
the calibrating is very much its own thing. There are good resources these days for that. There's EFI University and a bunch of material out there to kind of get your feet wet and figure out some of the basics. Um,
Yeah,
but
nowadays there is.
yeah,
When I learned how to tune, it was
yeah,
like
no, it was there was a couple of books and theories and whatnot, and
100%.
some basic like thermodynamics and how an engine works and the combustion cycles. But these days, it's there are some good resources to kind of just figure out what some basic calibration practices entail.
Yeah.
The reverse engineering side, that's a whole nother that is very um, processor and software dependent on what exactly you have, what model of car, what generation of ECU software is on it. And I would suggest if you want to get started, I would start with something older, like mid 2000s, early 2000s. That's going to have the most information available to you online to kind of look up and start building your
Mhm.
kind of knowledge base on how to progress, because generally all these ECUs are iterations of previous versions, just like everything else in the world. So
Mhm.
once you figure out kind of the older stuff, you can keep pushing and see how they did it on later and later models.
Yeah, I would say maybe you'll agree, Nate. If you want to start dabbling with it, buy like a 18T A4
Yeah, 270 or
and
ATA4
go
is
find. I'm
fine.
sure there's flashes floating around online. Figure out how to flash the ECU. Get in there, see if you can access the maps. See if you can start tweaking.
Yep, yep.
Um, I know that's pretty much how Nate started, and
Yeah, I mean
S-
it's how everybody has to
Steve
start somewhere.
Steve, our developer, one of our developers, also
Yep.
just decided he actually bought an APR file for his car and figured there's got to be a better way to do this, and just went online and started figuring it out.
Yep.
The newer stuff's harder to get into, but the old, like the A4 is pretty much open
Yeah. Oh
source.
yeah. There's so many resources out there,
NV7.
and it does help a lot in learning how things work, how things are structured, how the ECU kind of got their own little operating systems and how that interacts. And it does apply. So it's certainly the cheapest and easiest to get into the older stuff.
Yeah.
And then yeah, if you really get your head around it, you can pretty easily start moving that towards the new stuff. As far as tools and test suites, it's really going to depend on the ECU you're exactly working on. There's different tools that are better at some than others. There's IDA Pro, there's GDRA, there's a number of reverse engineering tools out there.
Hmm.
It's going to depend what you're comfortable with and what the tool does.
All right, so that should give you a good start. Best of luck.
Yeah,
But
it's a steep hill.
nobody wants you to be able to do this.
That's yeah, exactly.
It's not like developing for Cisco where there's like a tool set. This is like,
Yep.
Bosch is like, fuck you. You're never gonna get into this. I hate you. And that's where you start. And there's no tools. There's
And that's all of them: Bosch, Continental,
yeah,
Delphi,
any
whoever
any
you want to talk
OEM,
about.
and then the security just improves and gets harder and harder and harder. Of course, as exploits come out, that changes. But initially, these ECUs are completely locked NSA level security. So,
Yep.
But by the time you have ME7, I mean, that's just, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Yep. And I mean, in the days ME7 came out, it was it was going to be like an untunable, impossible to crack ECU, and
people were doing like Zener diodes and throttle bodies,
cut the fenders and all
yeah.
these other things to try and get around
Mm-hmm.
the software with some hardware hacks. But eventually people figure out the exploits, the weaknesses, get in there, and then once you're in, you can do what you want with it.